Let's take a look at the RS3 Pro on the SmallRig ring. I've been using this for a little while, not long enough to make a review about it, but I have gone through each way to set this up and with the different powering options. There's two ways to set this up and two ways to power it. The first one that I'm using here is in underslung mode, or you can flip the whole gimbal over, put the feet on the bottom, and use it as a normal right side up gimbal like you would use with the battery grip and the tripod holder. There's also two ways to power this as well. This is using the V-mount battery with a battery plate and the power adapter for the RS gimbals. You can also use the original battery grip that comes with your RS gimbals though. This works with the RS2 and the RS3 Pro, so for the sake of this video, I'll be using my RS3 Pro, but at the end, I'll throw my RS2 on here and just show you that everything works as intended. Let's take this setup apart and I'll walk you through each part of putting this together. It sounds pretty straightforward, but there's actually a lot of things that you can do incorrectly, and if you do them wrong, it can lead to unexpected results that I learned. So let's take this apart and build it together. Now that everything's apart, let's start by doing underslung mode. For underslung mode, our bottom piece will be this very bare piece without the mount on top. So we're gonna start by putting our feet on here, and I like to put the larger end of the feet away from me because we're gonna start by the back of the camera will be to us, and we want the camera to be facing forward. Most of the weight will be that way, so we want to support all the camera weight with the longer edge of these feet. So now that our feet are on the bottom piece, we're going to start by putting our uprights on. These are nice because they have an oval design that's not going to move once you put it in place. So be sure to put it on and lock it into place and then screw it on. We're going to start by using the battery grip configuration in underslung mode. And one thing to note about this, there are two screws on the quick release plate that comes from the ring, a 5/8 and a 1/4 20. The bottom of the regular battery grip only has one 1/4 20, so you can screw in the regular tripod and extension that comes with the gimbal. This makes sense for just using the tripod. However, there's only one point of contact on the bottom of this battery grip, so we're only able to use the 1/4 20 on the quick release plate. This might not seem like a huge deal, but you really have to tighten this thing down to get it to firmly lock into place. When we're talking about the V-mount battery power adapter, there are two 1/4 20s and a 5/8. So we can really lock this in place and screw it down so it won't be moving side to side because there's 2 points of contact. So now that our quick release plate is firmly onto the bottom of our battery, I would recommend using a screwdriver and really wrenching this thing down. Don't try to use a 1/4 here because you really need this thing to be tight. So we're going to slide the quick release plate with the battery onto our gimbal and make sure it clicks into place. And now we're going to take this lock up here and make sure it is firmly closed so we have a nice connection here. So now that our battery grip's on, we're going to take our gimbal, and with the screen pointing forward in underslung mode, we're going to take this and put it onto the battery grip and firmly make sure this is in the locked position. Especially in underslung mode, you don't want your gimbal falling off of your battery grip, so make sure this is really tight, a good connection. After we unlock all of our axes, we're going to spin this arm around so that the Ronin is able to be read upright from behind on here. Now that our camera's on the gimbal, we can power the gimbal on, and we will notice that the actual ring doesn't seem to be working. We don't have anything talking to these two devices, so the included adapter will go onto the side of the RS3, and after you tighten this down and power it on, you'll be able to use all of the functions from the back of your ring to move the gimbal or recenter the gimbal, and it will actually go to the front. And that is the reason we wanted to mount our screen in the front of us, because if we mount the screen behind us so we can see it, if we hit recenter, the gimbal will actually rotate back to us. And that's not what we want. We want the gimbal to be able to be operated when we're using the ring and we press recenter, and the gimbal will actually recenter for us. So this is the quickest and easiest setup we can do with our RS3 Pro or RS2 and the ring. This is nice because it's only one screw to slap onto this quick release plate, and you can disconnect it and it's ready to go right away. You can slide it back in and there's no additional cables or wiring or anything to deal with. I do think the performance is probably the worst with this battery grip though, because if you're using this ring, and especially if you're behind a car or if you're running, all of your movements get transferred to the camera much easier. For the best performance with the battery grip, I would say use it right side up and try not to be like full sprint running with this and expecting it to be super smooth footage. If you're gonna be in a really harsh environment and you need the stablest footage possible with this ring, I would say picking up the V-mount adapter, having your camera closer and not as suspended, transferring all of these movements to the camera, it will be a big help, but also those 2 points of contact from keeping your gimbal from binding back and forth. I'm sure if I try to move this, I put it in there pretty tight, but if I really wrench on it, I can move this back and forth. If you're just walking around, you're probably not going to run into this problem, but if you're behind a car or sprinting, this could be something that you run into, and why I would recommend using the V-mount battery. So let's set that up next. When it comes to our V-mount setup, we're going to take our quick release plate off of our ring, and then we're going to take the power adapter. This is separate from the ring, and it will take a D-tap from our battery plate to a like a 2-pin OB302 is what SmallRig calls it, power to provide power to our gimbal. So let's put the 5/8 into the middle and 1/4-20 to one of the outer sides. Again, this is going to make 2 points of connection, so it will prevent our gimbal from moving from side to side and keep it more secure. So we're going to slide this into the quick release plate and we're going to make sure to lock it tight. And then we're going to take our RS3 Pro and actually feed it into the battery adapter. Now we'll put our support that supports the gimbal to the V-mount battery adapter. This goes into one of the NATO quick release ports on the RS3 Pro or RS2 itself. And then you unscrew one of the NATO plates from the actual V-mount battery power adapter so that you can have a secure connection. And this is another reason I like to use the V-mount power. Not only is it higher up to the connection point, but it also has additional support as well. So now that our support is on, if for some reason your RS3 gets loose and simultaneously the battery for the quick release is pressed, our support is not letting our camera fall down. Hopefully this would never happen. You would never have to use this, but it is nice to know that that support is there. Now we're going to attach our V-mount battery. This is the SmallRig crab mount. So this just takes a regular V-mount battery plate, but you can put it onto any pipe like a tripod or this ring. So this is nice. You can put your V-mount battery on there. I'm using the FX Lion Nano 2, and make sure to put the D-tap port forward on top of our ring. So now that our V-mount battery plate is attached to our ring, we're going to take our D-tap cable, and this D-tap cable comes with the power adapter. So we're going to go D-tap from our V-mount battery plate or V-mount battery, and we're going to run this into one of these two front slots. The idea behind these two slots is that you run power into one and then you can run power out of the other. So you could technically, if you bought the SmallRig base plate that has the power supply in it, you can run another one of these cables from the opposite port into the other port here and then power your camera from the base plate. I don't have that base plate, but that is another way that you could use the V-mount power to power everything. With our D-tap cable installed, we're going to take our transmitter and put it to the NATO quick release mount onto our RS3 Pro. And now we're going to put our camera onto the gimbal. Again, we're going to manually unlock these arms, and then we're going to take the Ronin and make sure that the Ronin label is actually facing us, behind us, right side up. So whenever we turn our gimbal on in underslung mode, it will know that it's in underslung mode and it will react appropriately. So now that our camera's on and it is still balanced, we will turn our V-mount battery plate on to get power to our gimbal, and then After waiting a second, we're going to turn our gimbal on, and in theory, everything should power up. I can't see the screen, so I don't know if it's on. So now that our gimbal is on and paired to the ring, we can use the remote on the side of the ring to actually control our gimbal. And to just quickly illustrate our setup here, we have the Sony multi-cable going into the top slot of our RS3 Pro and then just into the bottom slot of our RS3. So if we recenter this and then we can start recording. And then if we put our remote back, we can use this to stop recording. I will just say a quick note about the RS3 Pro specifically. The auto locks on this will be confused if you're not using recenter and lock in your settings. In underslung mode, the gimbal is smart enough to know that when you shut it off, if you're using recenter and lock, it will literally recenter in underslung mode and lock the gimbal arms in place so you can't move it around. And when you start it up again, it won't go through a big calibration. It'll just unlock the arms and be in underslung mode. If you select fold and lock with your automatic lock settings, it will turn around and it will think it's in upright mode. And when you turn it on again, it won't know it's in underslung mode and it will go and it won't orient properly. So if you're using the gimbal in underslung mode, specifically the RS3 Pro with the auto locks, make sure you're using recenter and lock. So let's build the upright versions. This video has taken way longer than I thought it would. Now we get to take this thing apart. So with our gimbal disassembled, we're going to take our piece with our quick release plate in it and we're going to use this as the bottom plate. So we're going to install our feet, and again, I'm going to put the front of these feet facing forward so we have more support going forward. So with our uprights on, we're going to take this top piece and install that as well. Now we're going to take our RS3 Pro with our V-mount power and support adapter still installed and the quick release plate still installed, and we're going to slide it into our ring, screen towards us. After locking this in place, we can now install our V-mount battery and V-mount battery plate. We are going to make sure our D-tap is facing us because now our power ports are on the back of the gimbal. So we want our cable management, because this cable isn't very long, to be as tight as possible. So with our V-mount battery plate and battery installed, we're going to take our D-tap to power adapter cable and install that. Again, it doesn't matter which one of these ports you use, as long as you're not using two battery ins or somehow two battery outs, those won't work. One is made to be in, and then the other one will automatically be the out that you can feed to your camera or a monitor. So now we can turn our V-mount battery plate on and our RS3 Pro. And now we're using our ring with the V-mount battery. And to illustrate that you can use the recenter and lock or the fold and lock in this orientation, I'll just turn it off. I set it to fold and lock, which is one of my favorites when I'm just using it in regular mode. Like I said, underslung mode, you definitely want to use that recenter and lock, but for this is just fine. So I've disassembled the V-mount setup and we're using the regular battery grip now. And just another note, we need to remove this 5/8 screw because the only connection on the bottom of the battery is that 1/4-20. So we only have access to one 1/4-20 here. If we leave that 5/8 in, the battery grip will actually not sit correctly. Now that we have our 5/8 screw removed and our 1/4-20 firmly onto the bottom of our battery plate, and we made sure that it's perfectly in line, because if it's not perfectly in line, when we go to recenter the gimbal, it'll always be like a little bit off, which is very annoying. I've done it before. Now we can attach our battery grip to the ring, be sure to lock it in place, and then we can take our RS3 Pro and put it onto the battery grip. Make sure we also lock the battery grip into place. And with the transmitter attached to the NATO plate on our RS3 Pro, we can use our remote to move our camera around. If we're using the appropriate camera control cable, we can stop recording, or move the camera back to center. This is a really nice setup if you want to just slap your gimbal on the quick release plate and then go with one screw. I prefer the V-mount battery plate with the additional safeguard of that support. But if you're just looking for something quick and easy, this is a quick and easy setup. So which of these setups do you guys like the best? Let me know in the comments down below. I thought this video was gonna take like a half hour to make. I'm on 2 hours and 15 minutes into this thing. I'll have more RS3 content coming in the future, so be sure to subscribe and check back for that. Thank you guys for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.